Okay, here we go. So let's build our motor. We're gonna go with the 5-second delay, and we're gonna start with our forward closure. So the first thing I'm gonna do is grab my forward closure and my grease. I'm gonna put a finger inside of the forward closure and then rotate the forward closure around that finger while I apply grease. Little squeeze, doesn't take much grease. I'm gonna take and smoosh that grease down into the threads, make sure it really gets all the way in. Set that down, do the same thing with my aft closure. I'm gonna, again, stick a finger inside so I can rotate around that finger. Squeeze out the grease onto the threads. And again, it doesn't take very much grease. And now I'm gonna take and smear that grease all the way around. And I'm gonna set that down. Back over to our forward closure. I'm gonna come over here and take the grease and put a smear of the grease all the way around the inside of the forward closure. And then take my delay O-ring and press it down right through that grease. You want it to get the grease on it. Kind of seat down there in the very bottom. You can just barely make it out in there. Okay? I'm going to set that down. The grease should hold the O-ring, but I guess as a point of preference, might set it to where the forward closure is the narrow end down. Grab our delay insulator and our delay element. Slip one inside of the other, just like that. Slip the delay spacer in the other end. And now this part, very, very important, is get your delay spacer, the end with the spacer on it, needs to face away from the O-ring. So you're going to be able to see the spacer when you slip the delay element into the forward closure, like that, okay? All right, now let's get to work on the case. Case is pretty simple. It says right here, if the paper liner is tight, peel the outer layer. Bam, I did that. That's on this one right here, okay? And it looks a little dirty because it's been in and out of the case a couple of times, and that's okay. So I'm gonna pick up my case, make sure that the liner fits. Ooh, that's nice. We want it to be able to just slide right in there and then be pretty tight. This one's maybe a little bit tighter than I would like it, but we're good enough to go for sure. So we've got that. We're gonna take our propellant grain and insert that inside of the liner. We're going to insert the liner into the case, and we're going to center it. So you just kind of feel in there and get it centered with your fingers, and it'll be probably close enough. Now what you're going to do is take your forward insulator and drop it in one end. Mine's not wanting to cooperate. Let's see, use this little, there we go. Get it to seat down just like you want, all the way across there. Drop an O-ring in on top of that. Put a little bit of grease right around that O-ring. Doesn't take very much. Get our forward closure and set the forward closure into those threads and screw it in. Now it's important, do you see the gap between the forward closure piece and the motor case back here? We want to make sure that that gap closes entirely. So that's not good. That's not closed all the way. We want to have it all the way to where you can't see any light between the forward closure and the motor case, just like that. Now we're going to move around to the back side, or our aft. Now what you're going to do is take your nozzle and slip it in place. It's kind of fight with you sometimes. It gets caught up on the threads, but when it's right, it will slip all the way down. You can still be able to see the threads. Okay, kind of hard with everything here being black. Now you're going to take your aft O-ring, drop it over the top. And now remember, we already greased the threads of our aft closure, and we're going to start to slide that together, start to spin that together. You'll feel the threads engaged. And now twist and twist and twist, and same as before, the gap between the aft closure and the motor case is no good. We want to get that all the way closed up. So there's actually a wrench for this. I'm going to try and get it with my fingers, although I may end up going back with a wrench afterwards off camera. And this one is tightening up pretty quickly. So yeah, there's a little bit of a gap here right between the motor case. You see that little gap. I'm going to tighten that up with a wrench off camera. I don't have my wrench with me right now. Now, part of the last stage here, we have our nozzle and nozzle cap and the ejection charge cap. And you see that I've already cut these little nicks in the nozzle cap. I think it's actually not a good way to go. I'll show you a better way in person. We're going to put the nozzle cap on the back and then cut those nicks first. Instead. And this time we're going to kind of pinch. So you pinch here, and you see the way it deforms the shape and the two pop apart. And then inside, there you have, that's the gunpowder. That's the actual ejection charge, the black powdery stuff that's in there. We're going to take that and set the motor on top of that ejection charge cap. If you try and turn the cap over, you're going to dump the powder out. So we're going to set it like this and then stand the motor up, and you'll hear it and feel it click in place. Just like that. Now we've got the ejection charge properly located. Now we need to put an igniter and our nozzle cap on. The igniter looks like this. It comes in these cardboard tubes, or it comes in individually little packaged plastic containers. When you pull it out, there's usually two. They're twisted up. We'll pull one out. We're going to open the bend in it to where we get it the full length. We need to be really careful not to mess with this end here. That black material on the end of it is what actually burns and ignites the motor. So now we're going to take that and gently slide it in. You're going to slide it in there, and it's going to, like mine, it's kind of holding up on me. So I'm going to wobble it around just a little. I'm going to slide it in until it stops. There it is. It's stopped. I'm not going to press any further. If I continue to press in there, it bends that little black piece over and shatters the black material off the outside, and then we get poor ignition out of our rockets, and they're kind of expensive. So we want to not do that. Now, this way, to get your nozzle cap on and to keep the igniter from pulling out, what you're going to do is bend that igniter over the end of the nozzle like that. Okay? Now pin that with your finger, pressing down tightly. And now take over here and start to wrap the igniter wires around the nozzle, as well as pressing them down into that aft closure. You want to get about a half a wrap. So you see where I have about halfway wrap. Now I'm going to take my nozzle cap and stick it over the wires first, not the easy side, over the wires first, and then press that down over the top like this. Now, I told you that I'd already cut these nicks in here. I'm going to show you a better way to do that. Is if you'll wait until you have it on the piece like now. You have it already assembled on the nozzle. Now you'll take either an X-Acto knife, or I'm going to use my pocket knife, but any kind of a knife, and you're going to put it to where your knife is in one of the gaps in the aft closure, and you're going to press and then slide the knife. The knife only cuts because it slices. Don't try and press through it. You need to slide through it. Now change from the opposite side, aiming at the same point, and again press in and slide. It's the emphasis on slide, and that gives you that little nick. That little nick allows air into the nozzle and up into the motor case, so that when you hit the igniter button, there's enough air inside of the engine to actually start the burn and then let it complete. So with that, we have our completed assembly of a motor. Last thing I'm going to do is grab a piece of tape, put it on the outside here, and label it, the date that I loaded it, as well as how long the delay is. So here's my little piece of tape, and kind of greasy on the outside of the case, so we're going to hope it sticks. There we go. And my marker. And today is 1/4/21, and this is a 5-second delay. There it is. Hope you liked it.